It had been an ordinary day. People made their way home from a hard day's work, continuing their usual schedule of wake up, eat, go to work, finish work, eat, watch TV, sleep. Michael was one of these people after spending his first day working at a new cafeteria, newly opened with good pay. The only problem was that it was situated a few miles away, so being a 17-year-old college student, he was forced to take the train. Michael sat alone. He preferred it that way. No one to bother him or bring up unwanted subjects, or even just to be there. It would be a nuisance. The only other people he could see were a few old-looking people reading newspapers and sipping on the cheap coffee bought from the vending machine last stop. The lights of the train flickered regularly as Michael stared out the window, his cheek resting on his fist as he passed house after house and traveled through tunnel after tunnel. He took a deep sigh as he scanned the night sky. It was a clear night, the stars glistening through the black blanket and the large, full moon showering the landscape with a soft, elegant light. Despite the boredom, Michael was relaxed and content. It had been a good day. The train entered another tunnel, throwing his imagination off course as he jumped back into reality. Looking around the interior of the train once again, Michael submitted to the old-fashioned way of life upon noticing the newspaper laying neatly on the table in front of him. So he picked it up and flicked through, hoping to find something of vague interest. After a few moments, he came across a news report from the 21st of March, 2012. Today's date. It read,
"Mysterious murderer leaves entire family dead. Horror has struck the small town of Darlington today as a family consisting of a father, mother, 2 sons, and a daughter have all been found dead in their beds. Reports say that detectives arrived at the scene only to find no possible evidence left behind but a knife lodged in the mother's throat. Forensic scientists have attempted to gather a DNA sample on the handle of the knife. However, the tests show that the last person to hold it was the mother, and as of now, this case has ruled off the possibility of being suicide."
Michael stops reading there, not only due to the story, but the fact that he lived in Darlington. He was on the way back there right now, slowly approaching the town in which a murder resides. It was an odd thought that made him unsettled. He adjusted himself to a more comfortable position and wiped the sweat from his brow. Enough of that newspaper, he thought to himself, as he put it down and laid his head back, his hands in his arms and his eyes firmly shut. Michael froze. Slowly, he opened a single eye and dragged it to the source of the noise. To the left, out the window, the sound of tapping on glass continued. "Just an animal or something," he whispers, his voice still shaky despite his attempt at self-assurance. However, as his eyes meet the window, the hairs on his back stood straight. There, in the darkness of the tunnel, a pitch-black figure stared from the bottom left of the window, straight into the eyes of Michael. It appeared to be a humanoid, but made of some sort of dark cloud, similar to liquid nitrogen. It had pinhole eyes and, even creepier, a large, human-like grin. Michael could also faintly hear it, almost as if it was struggling to breathe. The creature kept its smile and slowly descended until it was out of sight. Michael was paralyzed, his eyes fixed on the window, scanning all corners. He couldn't believe the petrifying creature he just saw. However, before he had time to think, the flickering lights shut off completely, and the darkness filled each portion of the train one by one, followed by the screams of the passengers. Michael instinctively huddled himself into the corner of his seat and up against the wall of the train with insane speed. His breath was shaky and his eyes were wide as he stared into the pitch-black corridors. The screaming had stopped now. With one hand, Michael reached into his bag under the table and reached for the small LED light on his keychain. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Like a Western standoff, he drew it out from his bag, flicked it on, and shone it into the darkness. Feeling more confident, he slowly rose from the seat and stood up, shining the light down to the other carriages. "Hello?" he croaked, his hands unable to keep the light still. What happened next made his eyes go wide with fear and the nerves in his muscles seize up. His very heart stopped momentarily as a warm gust of breath ran down his neck and a raspy voice from behind him said the word,
"Run!"
He didn't hesitate. He sprinted down the carriages one by one, dodging fallen suitcases and the belongings of the other, now missing passengers. He dare not look behind him. He couldn't handle looking at the creature's face again. Luckily, a glimpse of hope rose up as he had reached the end of the train. However, as he came to the door and placed his hand on the handle, it wouldn't open. Locked. With all of his anger, he pounded his fist against the glass, disregarding the pain and the tears welling up in his eyes. Eventually, he glanced to the right at a mounted fire extinguisher. With the same bloody hand, he grabbed it and held it up with both hands like a ram. Taking a few steps back, he charged full force into the door, and the extinguisher collided with the window, shattering it completely. Taking a quick step back, he realized the train was still moving, and much faster than originally. Not only that, but they were still in the dark, dimly lit tunnel. Michael had no other choice. He had to get out of the train, otherwise he'd be killed. Whether this creature was harmful or not, he couldn't risk it. But was it even chasing him? With that in mind, he turned around. He shouldn't have. There, in his face, were the pinhole, pure white eyes staring deep into his soul, the large grin that had sharp teeth and blood-red gums. It was the face you'd see at night as a young boy under his blanket. You'd stare into the darkness, and there, in your closet, a face, staring at you. Michael stared. That's all he did. He didn't move. He couldn't move. The creature then opened its mouth and whispered into his ear,
"You weren't fast enough."
Friday 25th, March 2012.
Young man found on train tracks, badly injured. A young man identified as Michael Ver was found today on train tracks leading out of a tunnel and into Darlington. He was found by a young couple walking along the train track, and despite how dangerous such a thing was, they have not been charged. Mike, the male of the couple that found Michael, said, "We were walking when we saw something bundled up on the train track. We had a flashlight with us, so we went ahead and checked it out. As we got closer, we realized it was a person, a man. We ran up to it and noticed he was still breathing, conscious even. He was gasping for breath as I picked him up and carried him on my shoulder. His body was... it was a mess. You wouldn't think it was a body if you saw it." His girlfriend, Jill, continued for him and said, "We walked a long time. I tried to give the man water, but he knocked it away with what was apparently his hand. He kept talking to himself, saying, 'Wisp,' and it's here," which was creepy to say the least. Eventually, we made it to the next station where we had a good enough signal and others helped us with him. We called an ambulance and now they're saying he's in critical condition. Michael Ver continues to struggle to stay alive. However, he's in safe hands and should be able to hang on. Detectives are unsure as to whether or not this was a suicide attempt due to the damage that was caused. His skin was slightly charred and black, and an arm was torn right off and found at the scene later on, and the rest of his body was covered in cuts and heavy bruising. Investigation will continue, and we will uncover more of this situation in a later story.
Tuesday, 29th of March, 2012.
Train discovered 5 days after departure. A train that had departed on Thursday 24th has been found today in Newcastle. What seemed like an ordinary train was, to everyone's horror, filled with at least 6 bodies, all completely unidentifiable due to what appear to be marks from a large blade. However, no evidence has been found as of yet. Reports say that this could link in the near death of Michael Ver and that perhaps he was the murderer of these people before jumping out the back of the train, resulting in his heavy injuries. However, this has not been confirmed and no charges have been filled in. Michael Ver has partially recovered from his injuries but has not stopped talking or slept for that matter without the aid of sleeping gas, yet that still has little effect. Doctors say that he will be fine and should recover in little under a year. His mental state, however, is still to be looked into.
In the month following that news report, Michael Ver, still heavily injured, escaped from the hospital and is yet to be found. Following this, there have been an increasing number of murders in Darlington with notes at every scene. They all read,
"Run!"